We're live. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome to the third week.
Yeah.
Virtual write-in. Thank you, phone, for alarm going off. Anyway, today is
The 18th.
18th. Thank you. And we are here for another great virtual write-in.
Hi, I'm Kristen.
Yeah.
I'm the Young Writers Program intern.
I'm Nick. I'm the editorial intern.
And welcome to our virtual write-in, where we talk about writing and we write and we have sprints. And then we write and you write, and it's like we're writing together. It's pretty awesome.
Our goal today is to help you fill some of your word counts, get some new ideas, maybe get some feedback. And if you're having a little trouble with your writing project so far, maybe break through some of those obstacles. Last week we talked about writing obstacles. We talked about what's keeping your story from moving forward, if anything. And we had some great feedback, a lot of really great ideas shared in the chat. And so this week's theme is kind of following along from where I think a lot of people are at in the month so far, which is what do you do when you're out of good ideas? If that's,
Where do you find inspiration in unexpected places? When you are struggling to come up with more ideas, or you're sick of your original idea, how do you make things happen? Like, where do you go from there?
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely a struggle, I think, that we've had and have as well.
Definitely. So just to kind of get started on this, let's just start talking about how your story has changed from the beginning. So think about, where you are in your story, and what are some things that you have or you haven't discovered about your story. What kind of room is there left for unexpected things to happen? You may feel like, especially if you are a planner like me, you may feel like you're kind of running out of steam to get all the story ideas, that you've had planned out, kind of putting them in. Or if you're a pantser, maybe you've kind of completed everything you thought you wanted to put in.
Or if you're like me, you're a pantser who has a lot of ideas that you haven't figured out how to put in yet, and your story has taken a totally different turn than what you thought, and you haven't figured out how to incorporate all of your original elements yet.
Exactly, yeah. So in the chat, if you want to share kind of what are some things that that you feel have changed in your writing project since the beginning, and if you want to share what you're writing about right now, what kind of project, be it a novel or a script, short stories, and maybe some genre. Let's see.
People have really good suggestions.
Totally. Aromatherapy.
I love aromatherapy.
Music helps. Yeah. If we're talking about inspiration, where everybody gets their inspiration from, I think there's definitely a lot of different places they can come from. When we talk about if we're getting stuck,
how has your story changed?
How has my story changed from the beginning? That's a really good question. It's odd. I'm working on two projects at the same time. They're pretty different from each other. The fiction project, it's definitely changed in terms of character personalities. I think I had a set idea at the beginning of what people in the story are kind of like, except. Yeah, I mean, just based on what has happened in the story so far, it's really kind of changed. One of my main characters was initially kind of going to be a really kind of a quieter but really calculating kind of person. But she's actually changed a lot to be kind of really taking charge, which I really enjoy because it kind of takes the story in places I didn't expect, which again is kind of what this writing is all about. What about you?
I have been struggling a lot with my story in that I've been having a hard time getting it on paper and coming up with ideas for things that are actually going to happen, because I tend to come up with characters and backstories, and I love that part. But the having things happen to the characters is a little harder.
Yeah, you were mentioning before, like you end up kind of like writing like vignettes a lot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely see where you're coming from in that, like, it kind of can feel like it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, it's not going nowhere, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm working on it.
I know a lot of people in the chat and previous write-ins have talked about how they feel like their stories haven't kind of kicked their plot into high gear, but it doesn't necessarily need to be that way. You know, you can just kind of write smaller stories. I'm a huge fan of like small stories that, you know, have big impacts on just the characters. So do you want to move on to the sprint?
Yeah, let's start the sprint.
Yeah.
And then we can talk more about this afterwards.
So a bit of lead-in into this sprint. Again, like we've talked about, you know, think about some things with your story that you haven't gotten to kind of, you know, take a crack at yet. Like, what are some things that you've wanted to approach or, you know, thought about it, but haven't yet? So this first sprint is going to be 5 minutes, and the prompt is, what secrets is your story keeping from you? And what do you want to know from your story or from your characters? So again, kind of think about what you want to discover, how you can get there, and kind of what's making your story work.
Does that make sense to all of you?
Yeah, and obviously, like any other prompt, you don't have to follow this prompt if you don't want. But again, kind of this exercise kind of for getting you know, your creative juices flowing as we move on to the rest of the writing. So I'm going to set the timer for 5 minutes, and I will let you know at the halfway mark. But yeah, good luck, everyone, and begin. I've got about halfway. And that's the time. Ready? Put your pens and pencils down. If you are writing on a computer, maybe if you want to share your word count. So yeah, let's talk about what everybody wrote about. Do you want to start?
I think my characters haven't figured out where they're going, and I don't know where they're going. So it's kind of a challenge.
In what way? Or like, what makes it challenging?
I think because the main conflict is that they don't know where they're going. And so it's very hard.
It's very realistic.
Yeah. I mean, so it's really hard to have them like wandering around like Holden Caulfield trying to figure things out, you know, running into people and having nobody to call. And, you know, it's like, where do they go next? You know what I mean? It's like a constant struggle.
So you mean like your characters, do you mean they literally don't know where to go next, or like more like figuratively?
They don't know figuratively. I don't know where to make them go literally.
Okay. I got
struggle.
You. Yeah.
What about you?
I thought a lot about like kind of what my personal goals were with the project, like the 2 writing projects, among other things. It's easy to think of, you know, a writing project within, you know, NaNo or Camp NaNo as like, I want to get to this many words, and that's why I'm writing it. But with one project in particular, I had to think a lot about like, why am I doing it? You know, what's my goal in this? Who is this being written for? And that's I mean, I feel like that might be an obvious question that people, you know, would ask of their writing, but I guess it's never come up for me. I've never really thought too much about like, why am I writing something? And this in particular was like, why am I writing? Like, what am I trying to accomplish with this that I couldn't in some other piece of writing? Which has made me think a lot. Yeah.
And that can be also a helpful question to go back to sometimes if you're struggling, is what was my initial idea? What was my original intention?
Totally.
How can we, you know, how can you recapture
the magic if it's gone away?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And your drive and your motivation and your inspiration. I mean, so what do, you know, when your inspiration goes away? You know, do you want to?
Sorry, I need to fix this window real quick.
How do you deal with that when you just don't feel it anymore? You don't know where to go. This is or you feel like you don't have any ideas for what to do next, like me. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. One of the popular NaNoWriMo kind of concepts and terminologies of the plot bunny, which is, just little story threads or bits and ideas that you want to put in there, or that are kind of nagging at your brain. And sometimes those bunnies just like run away and hide, like even though it's spring. And so I can definitely relate to that. Like figuring out, where your story's been going and kind of what you can do next. I think with writer's block, we talked about this a little bit before, was it's kind of twofold. Sometimes it's you just don't have an idea, and sometimes you have an idea, and it's just really hard to get into words. But one of the important things to remember, and this is what I was trying to get at, one of the important things to remember about NaNoWriMo and really writing a first draft at any time of the year is it's okay if you feel like it's not working yet. If you just kind of you can keep pushing, keep writing something, and you'll find your way eventually, even if it doesn't seem like that at first. Let's read some of these things from the chat. It is still spring. I know this because my allergies are acting up like crazy. Making a writing playlist, yeah. Denny in the chat says, when I'm out of ideas, I have one of my siblings tell me a random letter or word, and I go from there. Sometimes it's just one letter at a time to reach the goal.
I love that.
That's great, yeah. Bit of like a, oh God, what's the game? I'm blanking on the name, but that's a really good writing exercise.
Kristen says, the biggest secret that my novel is holding is that there are two similar religions, but one seems to be a more intense version of the other, and I'm wondering where they split and why. That's awesome. I want to know.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that too. That's a really good, important question to think about your world and your writing. So think about different maybe write about characters who have those different beliefs, and think about how they act in the rest of their lives. What kind of what made them followers of that particular religion or some other aspect of culture in your story. Whatever Lyra tells in chat says, whatever secrets my novel has, it isn't telling me that. It isn't telling me yet. I think the key word there is yet. That's
okay.
Yeah, it's okay. If you're writing secrets have not come out yet, it's okay. They'll get there. Ari Roberts says, I need ideas for conflict. What can go wrong on a fantasy sailing voyage? I think you kind of got at a really important tool for writing, especially when you're stuck, is what can go wrong. If you think about your story so far and you feel like everything has gone right, everything's gone according to plan, that can be great. But at the same time, it doesn't necessarily lend itself to conflict all that well. But
Kraken, iceberg. I love it.
Moving and exercising while you're stuck is also a great tip. Definitely, yeah. Get up and stretch and walk around a bit when you're writing, because it'll definitely come.
What do you do for ideas though?
Yeah.
Like for plot pieces and how to move forward. Like this is my biggest struggle is I'm very stuck in terms of things to go wrong.
Melissa in the chat says, when I run out of ideas, I can't talk anymore. Oh my God. When I run out of ideas, I like to torture my characters. Basically, I throw in bad luck and or an action scene that breathes life back into it.
That's a good idea.
Do you think that's useful for your story? Let me think about it.
Yes, it is. It actually is very helpful.
Yeah.
To think about concrete things that can be happening, especially that can put them in a situation that causes them strife or stress or whatever.
There's another great nanoism, the time traveling shovel. Have you heard that one?
Yeah.
When in doubt, like honestly, if you're super stuck, have a time traveling shovel from another dimension fly into your story and hit somebody in the face, and then see what happens from there. There's no way that's not going to start a conflict.
Is it the shovel of death?
Time traveling shovel of death. Yeah, it's a more fanciful version of kill off one of your characters.
Photos. That's cool.
Ooh, yes.
I said that earlier, didn't I?
Yeah.
Like going off of images and photos and like mental images you have of places or any of that.
Ooh, Astrophel in the chat says, a dice roll. Write a list of things that could happen. Throw some dice. Combine 2 or 3 scenarios depending on the number, and bam. that's really great. Sometimes it can feel like, you know, single ideas aren't necessarily conducive to like a whole story, but if you can combine them in kind of unique ways, I think that can be really helpful. Kai Christensen in the chat asks, what do you guys listen to when you write? I listen to all sorts of things. Definitely like a mix of like jazz and classical and kind of folk, but it depends on what story I'm writing.
Depends on what I need. I either listen to like hip hop or like explosions in the sky where there's no lyrics, and it's great.
Nice. So to kind of cap off this first discussion topic, what do you do when all your plot buddies go missing? I think this is, it's come up in the chat already, but I feel like for me, the fail-proof option is like get a hat, you know, literal hat or like a computer hat or something, and dump a bunch of like scraps of paper into it with just different ideas, and just pick a few out of it. Or, and this is one exercise we've done in the past, go pick up a book that is undoubtedly near you and open to a random page and just pick a sentence and go from there. Kind of see what that kind of leads to. Because, you know, I feel like that's kind of that random element almost is always helpful.
And things that are unexpected, it's helpful.
Yeah.
Because you have to grapple with them. And your characters have to as well. Do you want to move on to second sprint?
I think so, yeah. Do you want to...
So we were thinking, because if you're like me, you've kind of lost sight of where you're going, and you've lost your plot bunnies, and you don't know where your inspiration's at. So we were thinking, write a scene in which your characters or one of your characters have lost something. This can be figuratively or literally. How do they go about finding it, and what does that look like for them?
Maybe they've lost their time traveling shovel of death. Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah. So this is going to be a 10-minute sprint. And again, as always, you don't have to follow this one if you don't want to, but the more the merrier. And I'll let you know at the 5-minute mark. And begin. You got about 5 minutes left. And that's the timer. put your pens down and your typing fingers down. Awesome. So everybody, tell us what you wrote about. What are you writing about? What did your characters lose, figuratively or literally, and how did they go about finding it? What about you? What did you write?
I think she's lost her sense of self. And she loses it. What?
Oh, I said elaborate.
I think she loses it in a subway in San Francisco.
Wait.
That's where she finds it, actually.
So you're making me think of her sense of self as like a tangible thing.
Yeah.
Did she literally find her sense of self? Like.
No. She finds it within herself.
Oh. See, you're describing, I was thinking of like a little, floating orb. Like, this is your sense of self, and you have found it.
A spirit orb.
I mean, I think both are very good. That's awesome. That's awesome.
What about you?
I wrote about somebody who they're working on like a large structure, and they're very high up, and one of like their important like tools like broke off and fell off, and it's gone. It's gone.
One of my fears.
Yeah. So with this, I was trying to approach like, how does it get lost, and like, what's their reaction to losing it? So they kind of know like, there's really no way they're gonna find it. It's just it's gone, and so the focus was really on like what their experience was losing it.
Yeah, that's just as important, I think, and also their experience finding it. Let's see.
Yeah, let's hear what.
A dog disappeared from a car in a restaurant parking lot, chasing another dog that was stolen by a dog killing shelter.
That's one of my greatest fears, of my dog going missing.
It's happened to me.
Oh.
He came back.
Oh, good. Happy ending.
MC lost her expectation that guys would be attracted to her, but she's not considering it a loss. She's considering it a gain. Nice. Good for her.
Kimberly says, my character just met his editor and kind of got excited about it. Light novels are fun. Definitely.
Someone said, I thought she said a sense of smell at first, but figured a subway would be the worst place to find it. Sheffield, my dude.
Is this what the whole world smells like?
It's terrible.
Okay.
One of my characters is about to have a reunion with a brother who was captured by the enemy and has been living with them for 2 years and working as a scientist. So I wrote about his disappearance. Wow, that's powerful.
That's awesome. Definitely sounds like this starts like a really great story. My character, Jenny says, my character fell asleep while reading and she starts to dream. The beginning of her dream is when she loses her sister and they had just come back from the funeral. Oh, that's definitely a compelling story.
So did she actually die?
Did her sister die? I think so. Yeah, her sister died.
Oh, that's horrible.
I mean, there's a lot of ways you can kind of take that story from there, though. So what's she trying to find? Shoots everywhere. My character, an artist, lost her love. She began painting to deal with the pain. That's what Amy says. A lot of people are talking about finding other people. Like
a lot of people are talking about like being body snatched and people dying and having to kill people, and
I mean, it's dramatic.
It's very dramatic.
There's a lot of stories you can go with that. This is very good. So hopefully this sprint in particular has helped y'all like think about what your characters are looking for, what they've yet to discover, what they kind of want to find.
Why does losing something have to be such a tragedy? Like, can you lose something and it be a good thing? Do you think?
I'm trying to think. There's got to be some. I'm drawing a blank.
You could lose an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I'm thinking of like
bad habit.
Yeah, losing a bad habit. That's what I was trying to think of. Is like, but that's less like you've lost track of it, or like it's gone. Whereas like you're
stick around.
breaking a habit. You could lose someone in the long run. It could be better. That's also
losing weight.
Losing weight.
That's not always a good thing.
Yeah, but if that's like your goal, that's also good. Losing a sense of self-doubt. That's awesome. Like
that's true.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, very, very good chat today. You never know when what seems like a loss ends up being for your benefit.
That's true.
There's a very good story that reminds me of, kind of just about taking things in perspective and how things may seem bad at first, but they might turn out to be good in the end. Not for all things, obviously, but
yeah, that's true.
Sometimes, yeah. Okay, you want to move on to the next discussion topic?
Can I just say, this person says, I kind of want to do a parody of the famous "My Glasses, I Can't See Without My Glasses" scene from Scooby-Doo. I can tell you, all of us who wear glasses have done that. That is real, and it's very real.
It's way too real.
It's too real.
I got new glasses recently, and God, it just reminded me of just how poor my vision is. Like if I take them off, like I don't even know what's on my screen.
Yeah.
Or same. I don't know what's on my
notepad.
So do you want to get started on the discussion topic? Because you can actually read it.
Around 2.
Yes. 2.
So think about like where you started with your story and what your original intention was, and what your original idea was. And then think about what's changed from that. Where has your writing process taken you from there? What has come up that you didn't expect? And how can you productively build on those changes, those things that have come up that you didn't expect, or things that you lost sight of along the way? How can you build on those changes, basically?
Yeah. I mean, kind of when we were talking about putting this topic together, what we discussed a lot was like what your original idea was for your story. And sometimes the idea is very, what's the word? Abstract. Like sometimes your ideas aren't like, it's a story about this, and so it's hard to identify like where it began. Anyway, what I'm saying is sometimes it can be hard to identify where your story began, but when you can identify kind of what the initial idea was, it's about, these characters doing this, and then you look at where it's kind of ended up so far. That can help give you like a unique perspective, on where the story is going from there. In a sense, like thinking about the present, how it's different from the past, and how that can change the future. If that makes sense. Of your story.
Yeah.
I'm all over the place today.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
At first, my story was magicless, and a story about a king who was super irresponsible and everyone hated him. How very Shakespearean. Now it's a story about a prince, I don't know what that word is. Fairy? His
fae changeling, like a fairy. Sorry.
And a kingdom divided between them. That's very complex. I like it.
Awesome. Uneducated Bat says, my original idea was for me to write one of those Harry Potter characters from the books, but with an immense twist, and now it's a series.
So how do all of you think that you can build on the changes, and how you can take that change from your original idea and like turn it into a new thing and have it kind of define your new course? That's not too hard of a question.
I can put it in perspective. I can give an example. With the current story I'm working on, the version that it is now, kind of the shape that it's taking, is very different from where it started a few years ago when I first kind of had that idea with the characters. And before, it was a lot more straightforward. Like there was a lot more focus on world conflict kind of affecting. It's kind of like a small setting story, and the idea was like the world, that conflict around them is affecting them, and that was kind of a larger part of the story. But since I've been writing it, and kind of changing the characters and the story and the setting around a lot over the years, it's really taken a lot more like kind of meditative approach of like just focus on like what the characters are, how they grow as people, as opposed to, you know, how a grander conflict is affecting them.
Yeah.
You know? And so building on to that kind of opens up some new doors for where the story can go. Because instead of having to rely upon, you know, like I said, grand story elements, I know that now I ought to focus on, you know, everyday kind of vignettes almost.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Hopefully that kind of clarifies things.
Yeah.
A lot of people are saying a lot of great stuff in the chat. Gabriella Carter says, my story has actually stayed on track the entire way, though, which is very surprising. So maybe, plotting every chapter in detail can definitely help. What I would suggest is, you know, think about if there are ways in which the story can change. You know, obviously, you know, it doesn't necessarily need to change, but if you want to think about, you know, what are some unexpected things that can happen that can take your story into new places you hadn't expected.
Someone says, my original story was a girl adventuring with her cat, but now it's much more complicated and I keep losing the cat. Yeah. That's sad. Because I feel like that's such a cool element.
Number in the chat says, my idea was about the Oracle from the future falling in love in the past, but it became about her destined one hero and his reaction to their future together, and that he can't save the world this time.
I love the development here. Like, I love how all of you have developed your stories.
Such interesting stories.
My story started out being about a war. Now the war is world building. The world's response to an environmental disaster, which is actually a heavy-handed metaphor for climate change. Nice.
It's an interesting idea from Esterfeld. I admit I did kill off the original protagonist because he annoyed me to no end. I don't know why, but he just made the cannibal look like a good guy despite eating people.
That's awesome.
That's really awesome.
That's good storytelling. That's good narrating.
Yeah. YM Nelson says, I'm having the opposite problem. Focus on the small plot points, and now I'm missing grand story elements. Yeah, that can definitely be the case as well. It kind of really depends on what kind of story you're writing. And I think that goes back to, you know, what do you want to get out of your story? What secrets is it holding from you? What do you really want to find out more about? Probably do a couple more and then move on to the last sprint. Sorry, my allergies are nightmares today. My original idea was robots, and now it's robots with feelings. I think we're getting robots that can feel stuff pretty soon, right? Like isn't that like, you know, in development now? I don't know. My hero, yeah. My hero has become the villain and lost his memory. I'm struggling to decide whether he can regain his memory and who he was, or how he will remember who he was. That's from Garnet Frost in the chat. That's actually a really interesting idea. I remember when I was in college, one of the areas of focus in my major was on like memory, and so I took a class that was all about memory and the self. And so it had to do with, like, you know, how do people change over their lives, and does that impact the kind of person they are kind of deep down, especially in the realm of memory. If somebody loses their memories, are they the same person they were before? And so that's kind of going back to the original discussion, thinking about, you know, what the meaning behind your story is and how that's changed. Does that impact where your story can go in the future? I think that's at least my perspective in here. Yeah.
That's interesting. It's almost the way that this, like, similar to the way that gaslighting affects your reality and affects your sense of reality. I think that's super interesting. Do you want to move on to the next sprint?
Yeah, I think so. So our third sprint, our final sprint for the day, is going to be 10 minutes. And again, kind of going off what we've talked about, we'd like you to incorporate an idea, a scene, an object, a character, whatever, some element from your initial story idea that, you know, you may have wanted to put in before, but just haven't yet. So again, think of something from your story, especially, you know, from the planning stage or from the initial inspiration, that you thought about adding, but just hasn't found your way into the story yet. So I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes. And I'll let you know at the halfway mark. Yeah, ready?
Nice.
You'll have about 5 minutes left. And that's the time. We're going to put your pens and pencils down. We're done with the last sprint of today's virtual write-in. So what did you write about?
I wrote about a list that I had been meaning to put in my story that my character wrote, or my main character wrote for her younger sister. Actually, that part only came out of me just writing it now. About life and things to do and things not to do. What about you?
I was kind of thinking back. I had at the beginning, I had to go back and look at a old file on my computer where I had some notes from like early drafts. But I thought about one major element that kind of used to be there was like a war happening at a certain point, and kind of the story had a lot, like I mentioned before, started a lot more focus on like how that impacted them. And so I thought about like, okay, if you put it back into this current version of the story, what would happen? So I had to think a lot about like even if these characters aren't involved in any conflict, how does the conflict going on around them affect them in that rationing food, more traffic, duties imposed by the state, maybe their home has to be used to like quarter troops, fear and just kind of general daily anxiety, foreign presence, stuff like that. And so the more I think about it, it's kind of, I had to think, is this a wartime story? Is like that kind of what it's about? Or does it even have to be like that? I watched a movie recently called In This Corner of the World, and it's about a girl growing up in Japan around the time of World War II. It's really interesting. And again, the story isn't so much about like the war as it is just about her, her youth and adulthood. So sorry, that was kind of something I thought wrote a lot about. But yeah, what are people writing in the chat? Really quickly. Defenestration Nation says the character I'm writing is my main character's fictional character. So what I wrote is how confused he is without his author. Nice. Do the scene. Lois in the chat added about a couple hundred words, a whole chapter of something they wanted to add but hadn't yet. Very nice. Lots of really great stuff in the chat. So hopefully this has helped all you kind of get some of those ideas on the page. If you feel like your story's gone off track or it's gotten stuck, maybe getting back on track. And yeah, I think any other thoughts about that?
I think, one of those things that like when you watch interviews with writers, almost every Q&A I've ever seen has had someone asking the writers, where do you get your ideas? And the writers never really know. It's something they just can't really answer. And I think, honestly, a lot of ideas comes out of just writing and ideas begetting more ideas, which is why I think it's so important that, you've had those ideas in the beginning and that you're writing them and your story is developing and you're getting more ideas and thoughts and plot elements out of the process. You know what I mean? I think that's really important. And so thank you so much for joining us and for sharing all of your awesome stories and amazing ideas. I was always so inspired by all the comments and everyone's ideas.
Totally. I always feel like writing after the write-in.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Okay, so last bits of business. Winning for Camp NaNoWriMo starts soon. I believe the 20th, I think. You can find out on the Camp NaNoWriMo website. And you can verify, that's where you can verify your novels, enter your word counts or other types of goals. Those are more details on the website. You can change your goal even after winning starts, I think. I think up until the 30th. But again, you want to check the website for that.
If you are in the Young Writers Program, don't forget you can still submit to the Young Writers Contest until April 30th. That's just a short story, 300 words. You can find more information in the forums. That's only for young writers, though.
Mm-hmm. Trying to think what else. Yeah, our next write-in is going to be the last one of the month. It's going to be on April 25th, which is kind of odd because there's still like most of the week left, but that's when it's going to happen. Yeah, 1 p.m. Same place. And yeah, it's been good.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. Yeah. And don't forget, you can go back and watch this and previous write-ins at any time on the NaNoWriMo YouTube channel. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.